Hello, my name is Madeline McAfee. I've been a volunteer with PRC for about 9 years or so. Mostly teaching computer classes of various types. So thank you for showing up today, and I'm looking forward to it. If you have any questions at any time during the presentation, please feel to ask right away. I think we'll have plenty of time, so you don't need to hold your questions to the end. So the topic for today is VLOOKUP, which is a function in Excel. And I also learned in the course of preparing this that it also works in Google Sheets. So more and more people are starting to use some of the Google applications, and it's nice to know when something that you learn in Microsoft Excel is also going to work in one of the other applications like Google Sheets, which is the Google version of a spreadsheet application. And it's used for finding specific information in a spreadsheet. If you've got a spreadsheet with a lot of data in it, and you're trying to find specific data tied to maybe a specific person or a specific sales item or whatever, this is, rather than scrolling through a massive spreadsheet and rows of data, this is a function that will help you find data more quickly. Okay? And what it does basically, in a nutshell, is it's going to look for a value in the leftmost column of a data array or a table that you define in the function, and then it's going to look for, when it finds that value in the left-hand column, it then will return a value from one of the other columns in that same row as the value that you specified. So you'll understand that better when I go through it, but that's kind of what it does in a nutshell. So when do we use when do we use VLOOKUP? Some really common areas where it's used is to look up a price in a price sheet. So maybe you have a list of 1,000 part numbers or items or whatever, and they all have different model numbers, and you need to look up the price of a specific model number or a specific part number. Well, you can use VLOOKUP to find that price very quickly for that model number. It can also, another way it's used is to look up information about a name. Maybe you have a large contact list with a bunch of people and their phone numbers and their email addresses and all that kind of stuff. Well, again, maybe you need to find the email address for a specific person in your list. You can use VLOOKUP instead of having to scroll through your entire spreadsheet of data. And then another kind of interesting way of using it is using it to, well, you've got two spreadsheets with different information, but that have at least one column that's the same across both spreadsheets. You can then use VLOOKUP to kind of combine those spreadsheets into a common, master spreadsheet that has the information from both captured in a single spreadsheet. Okay, we'll kind of do some examples of those. So how is it used? First of all, the V in VLOOKUP stands for vertical. So it's designed to be used for a spreadsheet where you've got a lot of information, and each row that are arranged vertically across down your spreadsheet, each row pertains to a common record or a common person or a common model number. Okay, so basically your information is arranged in rows, and then your rows go vertically down the spreadsheet. So that's when you would use VLOOKUP. There is something called HLOOKUP if your data is kind of flipped on its side and arranged a different way. But we're not going to talk about the horizontal lookup. We're going to talk about VLOOKUP. Okay, and it's much more prevalent for the data to be arranged that way in your spreadsheet, and VLOOKUP is used a lot more than HLOOKUP. There's two methods of searching. One finds an exact match. Again, you're going to try to tell it what information you want to match. You can either look for an exact match, or you can look for something that's approximate or nearest. And the secret to VLOOKUP is to make sure especially when you're doing the approximate match, it's an absolute requirement, is to make sure your data is organized so that the column where you're looking for the match is organized either alphabetically or in order, from lowest to highest. And that, again, it's not an absolute requirement if you're looking for the exact match, but if you're looking for an approximate match, it has to be sorted in order. Okay? Any questions? Yeah.
How do you know which to use, or do you always use the approximate if you're not sure of the other?
I'll get into that in a little bit. I would say in most cases, people use exact. Like if you're looking, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a name, you need exact. If you're looking for a model number, you need exact. If you're looking for maybe a dollar value, that's when you might get into approximate. I've got an example that might show that a little bit better. Okay, so this is the function. It's really, VLOOKUP is just a function within Excel. So you would get to it by using your insert function button on your ribbon, or you could use the help or whatever, or just type it in. It'd start with equal, and you would type equal VLOOKUP. And the function looks like this. There's 4 values. There's something called a lookup value, a table array, a column index number, and a range lookup. And this is in brackets because this is kind of an optional one. And I'll go through what each of these 4 things are. But as a quick kind of way to get your reference, here's a spreadsheet. In this case, I've got 4 columns. There's an ID number in column A, the last name in column B, first name in column C, and then a birthday. Okay? So the lookup value, in this case, we would look somebody up by their last name. So last name is going to be this something in column B. Okay? One of the values in column B. And it has to be in the farthest left column of your array. Okay? So the next value here is your table array. And the table array here is what's outlined in red. So it consists of the last name, first name, and the birthday. The column index number are the column numbers starting with the first column, the leftmost column in your table array. So in this case, we got a column A over here, but that's not column 1 because we defined our table array as being B2 to D5. So that makes column B column index number 1, and then the next is 2, and the next is 3. Okay? So that can be a little confusing because these index columns are based on the array you specify, not on your whole spreadsheet. So column A doesn't even enter into the picture for this VLOOKUP. All right? Anybody confused on that? You okay? All right. And we'll talk about each of them again. So the lookup value this is what we want to look up. In the little table we just looked at, let's say we want to find the birthday of one of the people on our list. So what we're going to look up is going to be their last name. Okay? And that's going to be the lookup value. Okay? Again, it has to be in the first column of the table array, the leftmost column of the table array. And it's really best if that lookup value is unique in that table. Okay? If, for example, we had a table of last names and we had 2 people with the name Smith as their last name, it's only going to come back with 1 return value, and it's going to come back with the return value that it finds first in the table. So you got to be careful in choosing your lookup value and make sure it's one that's kind of unique in your table. So in the little table we looked at, using last name was fine because they were all 4 names were different. But if you have another list, you want to make sure you pick a lookup value that's unique. So like a employee ID number, if you've got a large database of employees, for example, like you're in HR, it's very likely that you've got two employees with the same last name. So you probably want your lookup value to be their employee ID number or their social security number or something like that, okay? All right, so that's the lookup value. The table array, again, this is the value within the spreadsheet that you want to be looked at when VLOOKUP is looking for the match, okay? So in the table array, the left-hand column has to be the column that you have your lookup value. And then you have to make sure that the array covers as many cells as what you're looking for it to find. Okay, so examples, since you're looking for in that little one earlier, since we're looking to find birthdays for a given employee, we have to make sure that the birthday data is included in our table array. When you're defining the table array, you can either use, type out a range in your formula, or you can give it a name range and use the name range. But you notice when I typed this into my PowerPoint, I used absolute cell references. It doesn't, it's just a very good best practice to do. You can use relative cell references. The function will work, but if you try to copy that function to another cell, your table array definition is going to change and it's not going to work. It's not going to work properly. It won't allow you to copy and paste that function into other cells and successfully replicate what you want it to do. And we'll see that as I go through that. Okay, so just in general, to be safe, you always want to try to use an absolute cell reference or a range name, which is really the equivalent of using absolute cell references. Okay, any questions? All right. The column index number, as I mentioned, the first column is where your lookup value is, and then you start just numbering to the right from there for as many columns as you want. But again, it's not necessarily the same number of columns as your whole spreadsheet. It can be a subset of your spreadsheet. Okay? And then the range lookup, and this is where you choose whether you want exact or approximate. Okay? So the last item in that syntax is either going to be the word true or the word false. Or if you leave it out, the default is that it's true. So true will have it find an approximate match, and false will have it search for an exact match. So if you leave that value empty, then it's going to look for an approximate match. You have to put the word false in there if you want to have an exact match. So as I mentioned, I think most people end up using this, in most applications end up using it looking for exact matches, which means it doesn't really become optional, it becomes mandatory to put that false in there. All right, so let's just kind of review that again. We've got the lookup value, which in this case is going to be the last name. So that's in the first column of our table array. Our table array here is in the red from B2 to D5. The column index number is the columns here. So if I am going to create a VLOOKUP with this example, I'm going to have what am I going to use as my column index number if I want to find the birthday of a given person? 3, right. Okay. And the range lookup, in this case, I would use exact because these are just names and they're not sorted in any way. So
you literally have to type in the...
You have to have the word false in there. Yep.
Madeline,
Yeah.
so your first column that you're searching on, that doesn't need to be in alphabetical order?
If you're doing an exact match, it doesn't have to be. It's recommended, but it's not required if you're doing an exact match. If you're doing an approximate match, it has to be sorted, either whether it's alphabetically or numerically or whatever. Okay?
Is there a way for us to put the column index numbers in there? I mean, if you've got a sheet that goes out, I mean, how do you just have to count the columns or?
Yeah,
say-
pretty much. I don't know that there's, I mean, I guess if you could create a row in here. Once you defined what your table range, table array was, you could like insert a row and say, and put a 1 here and a 2 here and a 3 here, just to kind of help you keep track of what your column IDs are. Just don't include those index numbers in your array that you're looking at.
Right.
Okay? So we'll go to the first example, and this one is going to be an approximate match. So the idea here, in this case, I've got a table that is sorted numerically from lowest to highest, and it's assume that this is some tax information. So the higher amount of the income or purchase or sale or whatever, the higher the taxes, and then there's a variable percentage that goes along with it. Okay, so what I want to do in this case is find the information. Now this isn't a huge table. I could easily just look up 7,500 and figured out where it fell in here, right? You get the same information just by looking at it. But imagine a much more complex table, right? So we're going to create a formula that we're going to put in this cell that's going to bring a return value of the fixed amount for each of these cells. Okay? So I'm going to go to the spreadsheet now. So what we want to do is we're going to click in cell C17. All right, and we're going to start our VLOOKUP function. So, but before we do that, let's just talk through what the different values are. The value we're going to look up, if we type a formula in this cell, the value we're going to want it to find is 7,500, and we want it to bring back the associated information for 7,500. There isn't any 7,500 in this table specifically. So an exact match wouldn't work, so we're going to use the approximate match. And it's going to find the value that's greater than this value, but less than the next value. Okay? So the table array is going to be this here. The column index number to get the fixed amount is going to be which column?
3.
Right. Well, it's going to be this column, right? And since this whole thing is our table array, this is going to be column index 1, index 2, column 3, right? So it's going to be column 3. And we can either use for the last parameter, we can either use true because we're using approximate match, or we can leave it blank because the default is true. All right? So let's go ahead and we're just going to type it in first. So we're going to type equals. And you notice if you start typing it comes up with suggesting VLOOKUP as the function. So I'm going to double click on that. All right? Then the next value is the lookup value. So I'm going to click on B17, or you could type in B17. And my array, and I'm going to not type it in with absolute cell reference, just so we can kind of see what happens if we don't do that. But so my table array is A4 to D13. So I'm just going to type that A4 colon D13. In this for this particular cell, I want fixed amount, so we said that's going to be column 3, column ID 3. And I could, like I said, I could put true or I can leave it blank. So I'll type true as the value here. Oops, need a separated by commas, sorry. And then we'll close the parentheses. Okay, so then I'll hit enter. Everybody get 0? So now just watch my screen right now. So so I've got 4 more spaces in this column that I want to fill out. So I'm going to just autofill or copy this one down and see what happens. Okay, but don't you do it. I just want to, so what happened when I copied that down? If you look at my formula now. So you notice what happened is it changed my array now to be A5 to D14, which is not the right data array, right? It's because I auto-filled it down one, it made and these were relative cell references, when I copied it down, I now have the wrong table that's in there, okay? So
No harm, no foul, right?
no, there is a harm and a foul. So if I entered 7,500 now, same thing as I had in that other one in there, I get an error because 7,500 is no longer in my table array.
Right.
Anything below 10,001 is no longer in my table array. So
we do need the dollar sign?
yes, we do.
Okay.
So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go back. Everybody know the quick way of putting in the dollar signs? You can use the F4 function key, and if you just click up in your formula bar, you hit F4 once, it puts in the dollar signs for A4. You click on the D13 one, it puts that in.
You do what? You click on it?
If you click in the formula bar on your formula,
Yeah.
and then hit your F4 function key on your keyboard, it puts the dollar signs in automatically.
17.
No, you don't want it on B17.
No, I know.
Because we want B17 to be able to be copied down into the other cells. Okay, so now we should be able to copy that formula down so those other values can get filled in under the fixed amount, right? So you can either use copy or autofill to fill the rest of those cells. Did we get that? Yeah? Okay.
Is
All
that
right.
the amount of tax they would pay then?
Yeah, in this case, it's the amount of tax they would pay on whatever this table is for. It's just an example, right?
It's not much tax, is it? I like that.
Okay, now let's fill out this other column on this sheet, okay? So how are we going to start? Equals VLOOKUP.
Parentheses.
Okay, and what's my lookup value? I still want to find, my lookup value is the same as it was before actually, B17, because I still want to find the information that's pertinent to the number 7,500. So it's going to be B17.
Or you could just type in that cell, right?
Yeah, you can type it in or click it or whatever, however you want to enter that, right? My table array is the same, right? And we'll go ahead and make sure we put the dollar signs in the first time this time. So dollar sign A, dollar sign 4, colon, $D, $13. Okay, and what is my column index number this time? Right, now I want it to pull from variable percentage column, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So I now have to use my column index number of 4. And then I can add the true word, or I don't have to. I'm just gonna close it this time, just to kind of show that you don't need to put the true in there. So close parentheses and hit enter. Okay. So again, for this first one, 7,500 is less than 10,000. So basically, there's no fixed amount and there's no percentage amount at that level. Yeah. So really, the only thing that changed between these two columns are our lookup value was the same, right? Our table array is the same. The only thing we did differently was we chose from a different column index. When we asked it to return a value, we asked it to return a value from column 4 instead of returning a value from column 3, right? Okay, and now we can copy that one down.
So by not writing, typing in true or false, it's not an exact or it is an exact?
It's approximate. It defaults to approximate.
Defaults to approximate.
So true or no value, it defaults to approximate. Which, as you can, like we said, in a table like this, you really need approximate because a lot of these numbers, 14,078, you don't have that exact value over here. You need it to find the closest to value. So this is an example where that approximate type of lookup is important, where you're looking at.
For using bands, right?
Yeah, where you have like a band of numbers, like this example, right?
So if we did an exact, it would find it?
It wouldn't find it, right?
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
You would return an error. You'd get the NA error, I think. Okay? All right. Now, just let's kind of just play around with it a little bit. So, again, this table is small enough so you can actually verify and look that these numbers kind of meet there. But let's just see what happens if we change this 7,500 to 9,999. Still 0, right? If we change it to 10,000. Oops, I changed the next one to 10,000. Okay. That one got changed. So if we change this to 10,001, you can see it captures that. Now I'm looking at that second row. Or if we make this one, let's see, 49,999, it's picking off the everything below the row below the 50,000, right? So 40 and 20. Okay, so that's an example of where you use that approximate match. All right, you ready for another one? All right, so let me. Okay, so my next example is a sales order. Let's say you've got a team, your company has a team of salespeople, and they're out there in the field trying to take orders, and you've got a lot of products that they're selling, and there's a big price list that goes along with their products, and they have to go, every time they want to make a sale, they have to go look up the price and then enter it into their sales order. So you want to make their life a little easier because salespeople like to have easy lives, and they like to, be out lunching with clients and not spending all their time looking up stuff in spreadsheets. So you're going to make their life easy, and you're going to create their sales order form with VLOOKUP. and it's going to help them put the correct prices right in their form. So let's go to the next file in your VLOOKUP folder on your desktop, and it's called Sales Order with Price List. Okay, so you notice on this there are two tabs. The first one is Sales Order, and I downloaded this sales order form from one of the Microsoft Excel templates that are available, right online. And then I added its second tab there is just a price list that I just made up. So it just the price list just has an item number, a description, and then a price, a unit price associated with each unit, okay? So what we want to do in this spreadsheet, and I did one line already, but we're going to do the next ones. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So we want to be able to, for the salesperson, to type in a quantity, type in an item number, have the description come up automatically, and have the unit price come up automatically. And then when I downloaded the spreadsheet, it actually already pre-calculates the total for each line by multiplying the quantity times the unit price, and then it gives you this total out here. Okay? So what we want to do then is we want a VLOOKUP function in this cell, and we want a VLOOKUP function in this cell. We want this one to return us the description, and we want this one to return us the unit price from that other spreadsheet over on the price list tab. Okay? All right, so we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. The first thing I want to do is I want to go to that price list, and I'm going to create a range name for this, which will make it a little bit easier for me to use that range in my formulas on the other tab, okay? So we're going to highlight the area, the range that we want to create. So we want the item number to be what we reference, what the salesperson types in, and then have it auto-populate, right? So the range has to include column A, which is the item number, and these two columns are the information that it's going to pull back. So we have to make sure that our array table includes this area, right? So we're going to go, if we go to our Formulas tab, so we're going to highlight that range or select that range. We're going to go to Define Name. And actually, I did it, so it's probably already done in your spreadsheet. So when you highlight that name, does it come up with the word lookup in your name box there? But if it didn't, you could go into this Define Name, and you could give it a new name. In this case, we're going to leave it the way it's already defined it. So I now have this range defined as lookup, okay? So I'll be able to use that on my other spreadsheet. All right. Is that clear or confusing?
It's already done for us?
Yeah, I did it when I created the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go in, our first VLOOKUP we're going to create is in cell C19. So we're going to type equal VLOOKUP.
To the sales order sheet.
Yep, sorry, thank you. Go back to your sales order tab in your worksheet. So what's my lookup value for this item? What is going to be my lookup value?
For the blue sweater?
No, for this line that I'm in right now. Remember, I want the salesperson to be able to just type in the item number and then have these things auto-populate. So my lookup value is this cell right here. This is where they're going to type the item number.
B19, right?
Right, B19, right. So I'm going to type B19. and then a comma. And now my table array is from my other price list, but I gave it a range name. So in this case, we're going to just type the range name in there. So we're going to type lookup, and you'll probably get a little pop-up here that says, oh, this is a range name that you've got defined. So I can just click on that, double click, and it puts lookup into my formula. Okay? And then comma. Now what column in my table array was the description? My first column was the item number, my second column was description, and my third column was price. So what's my column index ID gonna, what's my column index number?
2.
2, right. I wanted to pull the value from the second column that was over on this price list tab. And then in this case, I need an exact match because these item numbers are all very specific and unique. So I'm going to click on false, or you could type in false because we want an exact match. And then I'm going to close parentheses. And then you can hit enter. And, oh, you don't have anything, we don't have anything typed into the number here. So let's type a model in here just so we can see if our formula is working. So A125. So now you can see it returned a sweater green for us, right? Okay, everybody got that? All right, let's go now and do the same thing for our unit price, okay? So we're going to start with what? Equals, right? VLOOKUP. And what's my lookup value? I'm still want to find everything that's referenced to this item number, right? So it's still B19, just like it was for the other one in that row. And what's my table array? Lookup, right. We're going to use the range name again. And what's the column index number now that am I going to use this time?
3.
3, right. Very good. You guys are getting the hang of it. And then what about my true or false? Which one are we going to choose? False. Okay, and then we're going to close parentheses. Everybody get 42? All right, good. Now, if the sales guy, all he has to do then is enter in the quantity that he's going to sell. Let's say he's going to sell 10 of them. Green sweaters are popular. It's Christmas time, right? So, and then you see that that's the formula over here actually automatically calculates the number. But then this is real, very common example, because then if somebody needs to update their prices, all they have to do is, update the price sheet that's attached to this sales order, and then all the salespeople get the same information at the same time anytime they create a new order. So it's, yeah.
Madeline, I was looking at the formula in the line total column. I would just do equals A19 times E19 to get the quantity times the unit price, but you
Right.
had also a discount, I believe, to take into account.
Yeah, and this, again, I just pulled this template off of the Microsoft Excel. So
Okay.
what this formula is doing is, first of all, it wants it, if there's nothing in the quantity column, it leaves it blank.
0, okay.
So the if statement here is if A19 is greater than 0, then put this sum in there, which is A19 times E19 minus whatever discount that might be in there.
Sure.
And then if it's not greater than 0, then it's empty quotes, which is just a blank. So that's what that if statement is doing in this
Okay.
that's column. And now if we wanted to, populate more, because we use the range name, we can just autofill down. So I've autofilled that same formula down. It's just giving me NAs right now because I don't have any numbers filled in. So I can put some of the other models in there.
What models are you using?
I use 131, A130, A127. We can fill in some quantities. So you can kind of get an idea of that, how much easier that is then, especially once you get that first one done, to be able to autofill it, create a whole spreadsheet, and then it basically populates all the pertinent information off that price list. So this next example is taking two spreadsheets that have at least one column in common, and kind of using VLOOKUP to combine them into a single spreadsheet. All right. So in this case, the file that you want to look at is called VLOOKUP-combine two sheets, and there's the first two tabs in that sheet. The first one's called birthdays, and the second is called flowers. So the birthday sheet looks like this. So there's 8 names of people and their birthdays. And the second spreadsheet are the same 8 people, but they're in a different order. Okay, so the left-hand columns, while they're both the names, they're in different orders. They're sorted differently for some reason. And then there's their favorite flowers, okay? So in this case, if I wanted to, I could probably resort this list until I knew it matched that list, and then I could just cut and paste over here. But if it was a much bigger spreadsheet and there were other reasons that it was sorted differently, you wouldn't want to have to resort and try to cut and paste and make sure they match up. And we're trying to learn VLOOKUP, so we're going to do it with VLOOKUP instead of cut and paste. All right, so we're going to go open that combine two sheets. All right, so this is the birthday spreadsheet. And this is the flower spreadsheet, okay? And then the third tab is the spreadsheet where I want to combine the two. So I took the birthday sheet, so I've got the names and the birthdays, and now I want to pull, using VLOOKUP, I want to pull their favorite flower by creating a VLOOKUP function here that's going to pull the information from the flowers tab. Okay? So let's start. I'm in the first row, and how am I going to start? Equals VLOOKUP. Okay, and what is my lookup value? A2, right, because I want to be looking up information for Alice in this case, right? So A2, and then comma, And then what is my table array? Where is my table array, first of all? It's on my Flowers tab. Right, so I'm going to click on my Flowers tab, and I'm going to highlight this whole array. Back to, and I want column 2. And do I want an exact match or an approximate match?
Exact.
All right, so we need to put in false. Okay, so I've got equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses, A2, which is looking at my name. Then this flowers with the exclamation point A2 to B9, flowers is telling it to go to the flowers tab to look at this array, A2 to B9, on that tab. Then I'm looking at column 2 of my table array, and then I have false. And then we get the result rows. Everybody get that? Remember, in this one we used just the plain old relative cell references, right? We don't have dollar signs in here. So if we want to copy this down, what do we want to do first? We want to change those to absolute cell references. So we can go into the formula and use your F4 trick to make those absolute cell references. And now we could copy that whole thing down. Before we do that, do we want to do another one step by step by hand? Okay, so everybody go ahead and try typing the formula in for the next one down, for C3. Equals we want to look up, we want to find whatever's associated with Ben. So for this row, right? So it's A3, comma. We didn't create a range name, so we have to go to the Flowers tab and highlight. Then you can, if we can make this one absolute. Oops.
Why is there an exclamation point after flowers?
That's how it tells it that that's a tab. It refers to the tab name and then the exclamation point and then the range that's on that tab.
Okay, so click on this again and click that would be a dollar in the A2, $2
We're just about out of time. If I just go back to my PowerPoint, this was another example of combining spreadsheets that I found on the internet I thought was interesting. In this case, they had one spreadsheet where it had the salesperson ID and the amount of sales revenue that they had, and another sheet where they had the ID and then the name of the salesperson. So they were able to combine that using VLOOKUP to have, one spreadsheet with their ID, the name, and the revenue all in one spreadsheet, and like kind of a real world example. And then it gave the formula here to show you. Thanks for coming. Great questions. Good job.